Google could not contain its impatience. In December 2004, Google Print was expanded dramatically with the announcement of agreements that Google had reached to scan books in the collections of the libraries of Harvard, Stanford, and the University of Michigan, Oxford University's Bodleian Library, and the New York Public Library. Nowhere in the announcement did Google point out that a majority of the participating libraries were not as confident as Google's attorneys were that digitizing the entirety of books that were still under copyright, without the copyright holder's permission, was protected by the fair use provision of copyright law. The Bodleian Library was willing to contribute only works published before 1900. The New York Public Library offered only fragile works that were no longer under copyright. Harvard initially limited scans to about 40,000 volumes. Stanford said it would have Google digitize hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of books from its collection, but conspicuously dodged the question of whether any works under copyright would be included. Only Michigan declared that Google would be able to digitize the entire library collection without limitation. Michigan's 7 million volumes were all Google needed to quickly secure coverage of recently published books for the moonshot. Authors and publishers alike objected strenuously to Google's abrupt abandonment of the principle that had guided Google Print before this, which was to index works still in copyright only if the publishers granted permission. Google reacted to the criticism with an announcement that created more unfavorable publicity for Google Print. In August 2005, Google said it would suspend scanning of in-copyright books until November, by which time publishers were to have submitted a list of books still in copyright that they did not wish to have Google copy. Google declared it would then resume scanning all books that had not been explicitly excluded by the deadline. Having a gun placed against their temples was not the best way to calm authors and publishers. Jack Romanos, who was then the CEO of Simon & Schuster, said, "There's sort of this innocent arrogance about Google. One minute they're pretending to be all idealistic, talking about how they're only in this to expand the world's knowledge. And the next, they're telling you that you're going to do it their way or no way at all." His company and other publishers tried to negotiate a revenue-sharing arrangement with Google as a condition of granting Google permission to index books, and Google showed no interest in discussing the matter. Romanos said, "They had a holier-than-thou attitude that hasn't done them any favors." Failing to make progress in talks with Google, the Authors Guild filed the first lawsuit in September 2005 against Google for Google Print Library's massive copyright infringement. The complaint mentioned in particular the University of Michigan's willingness to supply Google with copyrighted works. The next month, a group of publishers, McGraw-Hill, Pearson Education, Penguin, Simon & Schuster, and John Wiley & Sons, filed a second suit. The plaintiffs vigorously objected to the wholesale copying of entire books that were under copyright by a commercial entity without securing the consent of the copyright holders. In their suit, the publishers pointed out that Google's publisher program and library program were essentially indistinguishable, except that in the former case, Google sought permission of the copyright holders before proceeding, and in the latter case, it did not, at least in its copying of books under copyright held by the University of Michigan. The inconsistency in Google's approach in the two programs exposed the fact that Google was perfectly capable of abiding by copyright law, but had elected for its convenience not to do so. Each of the plaintiffs was and would remain participants in Google's print program for publishers. The publishers argued that their business depended in part upon ancillary revenue, such as licensing fees for granting permission for others to publish excerpts of works. In their suit, they pointed out that Google, a commercial entity, was going to display excerpts of scanned books in order to increase user traffic to its site, which then enables it to increase the price it charges its advertisers. Patricia S. Schroeder, the president of the Association of American Publishers, told New York Magazine that Google was a great search engine, which she personally loved. "But someone has to pay for the content, so there's something to search for," she said. "I say to Google, let's make a deal. You won't make quite as much money, but I think you'll do okay. Let's share, boys. Come on, let's share. You don't have to be so greedy." The litigation was embarrassing for a company whose informal motto, "Don't be evil," had become a well-known component of its public story. Don't be evil was an unusual corporate value, deliberately so. It originated in 1999, when Google began for the first time to add employees who were not engineers and who were hired for their business acumen. Veteran Googlers were concerned that the newcomers would pressure them to tinker with the order of search results in order to favor the company's advertising clients or build new products that only the MBAs were enthusiastic about. Amit Patel, a Google engineer who had been among the very first employees, conveyed his concern by writing in neat letters in the corner of the whiteboard in the company's only conference room, where it could be seen by Google's salespeople and their clients, "Don't be evil." Several years later, when the number of employees had grown to several hundred and the human resources team was casting about for a set of corporate values, Paul Buchheit, another engineer, suggested that Patel's "Don't be evil" be added to the list. Buchheit, who had worked at Intel before coming to Google, was determined to avoid the bland "strive for excellence" mission statements typically adopted by large companies. He also wanted something that, once you put in there, would be hard to take out. After Buchheit succeeded in having the mantra included officially, Patel spread "Don't be evil" on every whiteboard at the company he came across, and it became the one Google value that the public knew well, even though it was formally expressed at Google less pithily as "you can make money without doing evil," and was only one of 10 things Google has found to be true. Critics previously had said Google was failing to measure up to its declared "don't be evil" philosophy when it had censored results in 2002 that pointed to an anti-Scientology website, and when it was nominated for a U.S. Big Brother award by Privacy International in 2003. A Thomas Friedman column in the New York Times was headlined, "Is Google God?" setting Google up for being humbled. Among the most visible challenges to Google's self-defined credo for ethical business practices, however, were the 2 lawsuits filed by the representatives of the book world, which pointed its finger at Google and accused it of doing evil. This was a painful affront to Google's self-image. Shortly after the second lawsuit was filed, Google dropped the tarnished project name of Google Print and adopted a new name, Google Book Search. The company said that Google Print had confused users who thought the service was to help users print web pages. The official company blog post also anticipated that some observers would interpret the name change as a public relations maneuver and denied that this had been a consideration. "No, we don't think that this new name will change what some folks think about this program." When the lawsuits charging Google with copyright violations mentioned the role played by the University of Michigan, Stanford decided that it would be prudent to permit Google to scan only books published up through 1964. Michael A. Keller, the university librarian, explained, "We're not a public institution. We don't have any state immunity from being sued ourselves." In the University of Michigan, however, Google had a stalwart partner that, with state immunity, did not flinch when the lawsuits arrived. Mary Sue Coleman, the university president, defended Google's book digitization project as the most revolutionary enterprise I've ever experienced, a project that would provide a massive free directory for publishers that they did not appreciate. She joked that publishers regarded snippet as a 4-letter word, but speaking for herself, "I confess I see no difference between an online snippet, a card catalog, or my standing at Borders and thumbing through a book to see if it interests me, if it contains the information I need, or if it doesn't really suit me." The unobjectionable image of the fusty card catalog would be the one that Google and its defenders would invoke again and again. Lawrence Lessig, a professor of law at Stanford, provided a widely quoted defense of Google's book digitization. The publishers were effectively demanding, he said, their permission to enable a 21st century card catalog. When, in the history of man, did the law require permission from an author or publisher for a work to be included in a card catalog? The problem with the card catalog defense was that Google search results provided contextual snippets from the actual text, something that had not actually been seen before in the history of man, something less than the complete book, but something more than a card catalog's lean listing of author, title, publisher, and a few subject headings. Google put into place safeguards that were designed to limit a searcher from obtaining more than 3 snippets for one search term in a copyrighted book for which the copyright holder had not granted Google permission to copy. Still, the snippets would give Google the ability to attract more visitors, and more visitors meant increased advertising revenue and profits. So the 21st Century Card Catalog raised a new question. Should Google have to share the profits with publishers and authors? Or, at the very least, should Google share access to its digital books with other search engines? The publishers in their suit pointed out that they had no objection to digitization of books and, in fact, had joined the Open Content Alliance, the digitization consortium that obtains the permission of the copyright holders and then digitizes their works, making the digital copies available to all search engines, whether they are members of the alliance or not. The initiative had begun with Brewster Kahle of the Internet Archive and Yahoo in early 2005, with equipment and software donated by HP and Adobe. It was modestly funded, however. Yahoo did not disclose publicly its financial commitment, but it was estimated in the $300,000 to $500,000 range in the first year. The alliance was dependent upon handouts from foundations, such as a $1 million grant from the Sloan Foundation in 2006 to scan anti-slavery material that was held in several libraries. The initiative was stymied also by Google's Head Start. Kahle said he was told by librarians at several institutions that they would permit their books to be scanned only once, and they could not participate in the OCA because they were already working with Google. "We want a public library system in the digital age," Kahle said. "But what we are getting is a private library system controlled by a single corporation." Microsoft joined the OCA in fall 2005 with a news report that it would commit to digitizing 150,000 books the next year for its newly announced live search books. It limited the scope of its scanning to works that were out of copyright. Thomas Rubin, Microsoft's Associate General Counsel for Copyright, Trademark, and Trade Secrets, told publishers at the annual meeting of the Association of American Publishers that Google's demand that authors and publishers should notify Google if they did not want their copyrighted works to be scanned assumed that Google is the only game in town. He noted how impractical such a demand would be if other companies around the world adopted the same policy, placing the onus on copyright owners to track down every company that was engaged in unauthorized copying. Rubin also got off a biting, offhand criticism of Google when he referred to companies that create no content of their own and make money solely on the backs of other people's contents and are raking in billions through advertising revenue and IPOs. As a participant in the Open Content Alliance, Microsoft would not only create 2 digital copies of every scanned book that Google did, one for the lending library and one for itself, but would also have to provide a 3rd copy to the Alliance, which was free to index and display the digitized book on its own website. By foregoing an arrangement that would give it the exclusive control that Google secured, Microsoft could only hope that the digitization project would be of sufficient benefit to users of its search service that the investment would be justified. For Microsoft, scanning books by the thousands rather than millions was nothing like a moonshot. Danielle Tite, Microsoft's general manager of MSN Search, spoke at a trade conference panel in March 2006 about Microsoft's reluctance to take on digitization, given the enormous expense, non-exclusive rights, and uncertain payoff. She said, "I would love nothing better for all of this work to be already digitized, and all I have to do is go call it and index it and make a great user experience." Imagine, she said, if Microsoft had to create every web page in order to be able to index the page contents for its search engine. Unfortunately for Microsoft, the contents of books were not already digitized, so Microsoft had to pick one of 2 choices. Don't pick that content, or I have to put some skin in the game and actively help in the digitization process to get content in digital format so that I can deliver in what I'm trying to do. Google's Daniel Clancy sat on the same panel as Tite and suggested that one alternative to private companies undertaking the digitization of books would be to have the U.S. government take on the project. "Obviously, we spent a lot more than $1.5 billion on many things more questionable," he said, but left hanging in the air his concerns about the government controlling the images of the book pages. The panel moderator, Elizabeth Lane Lawley, a professor of information technology at the Rochester Institute of Technology, suggested an entirely different approach, however, avoiding the closed, proprietary project of Google's or a costly one undertaken by the government, a decentralized, bottom-up effort depending upon individuals and libraries of any size contributing to the scanning project in the same way that individual contributors had built Wikipedia. She said, "I think we have started to buy too much into this rhetoric that it's so big that only something really big and scary like a corporation or the government can do it, when in fact we're starting to learn from these technologies that not everything has to be done in a centralized way." Whatever might be said about alternative approaches, Google's book search showed that a single company with ample funding and a willingness to defend its copy first, delete later policy in court was going to move far more quickly than a loose confederation of companies like the OCA, which had scanned only 100,000 books by the end of its second year, or a grassroots movement to scan books that had not even been launched. Google signed up more university partners, a total of 28 by December 2007, including Princeton University, Cornell University, the University of Virginia, and the University of Wisconsin-Madison, as well as institutions outside the United States, including Keio University in Japan and the National Library of Catalonia. The University of California, which had first joined the OCA, then signed with Google, committing at least 2.5 million volumes to the project, giving Google sole search engine rights to their contents. Daniel Greenstein, a University of California librarian who set up the arrangement with Google, said, "I think last month we did 3,500 books with the OCA. Google is going to do that in a day. So what do you do?" The Google juggernaut gained momentum over time, not penalized in the least by Google's decision to hold on to the digital copies for its own exclusive use, without permitting other search engines to index them. Microsoft decided the best course was to emulate its competitor. Just 1 year after joining the Open Content Alliance and extolling the virtues of sharing digital books with others, Microsoft announced that it would adopt a policy like Google's, blocking other search engines from indexing the books that Microsoft digitized. Microsoft was not willing to match Google's investments, however, and falling ever further behind in the competition to digitize books became too discouraged to continue. After digitizing only 750,000 books, Microsoft announced in May 2008 that it was shutting down its scanning initiative. Google's moonshot consumed enormous resources in order to get off the ground, not to mention other costs in legal challenges and unfavorable publicity. The payoff was slow in coming. In February 2006, when Clancy gave a presentation about Google Book Search at a colloquium at Stanford, he was asked, "How has what you've scanned so far changed your own personal behavior in terms of how you use information?" Clancy was candid. It hasn't. He had no time to do academic research, he explained, being busy with work and family. Were he working in fields like history or computer science, where material that was in the public domain was abundant, he said he would be able to report that it had made a tremendous difference. Google's book index was stored in what was commonly referred to in the online world as a silo, emphasizing separateness. With the passing of a little more time, Clancy and his Google Book Search colleagues discovered that the book information that they were accumulating could be made immediately useful in new ways that let users pull information out of the silo for their own use or for sharing. In the fall of 2007, Google gave users the chance to set up a personal collection of book titles, which could be searched and also shared with others. A new tool gave users the chance to copy the graphic image of a favorite quotation or selected passage from books in the public domain and paste or embed the image in another web page. And literary references to a geographic location in public domain books could be overlaid on maps provided by another Google service, Google Earth, directly connecting one silo with another. The most important and most conspicuous advance for Google Book Search was its attainment of a critical mass of recently published books. Before 2007, a book search on Google was hit or miss, emphasis on miss. Then, suddenly, it seemed to be able to come up with most any title that was in print. The number of books that had been scanned remained small, The company said in September 2007 that it had indexed about 1 million volumes, which left it well short of the WorldCat's 32 million, and nowhere near the pace that would be needed to complete the project within the 8 years left to meet the original 10-year goal. And yet Google, somewhat miraculously, had achieved excellent coverage of recently published works. How had it done so? In May 2007, it quietly made the biggest change since it had started the moonshot. It added listings for books whose text had not been indexed, using publicly available bibliographic information drawn from online library catalogs around the world. Overnight, Google Books added all books in print without waiting to scan and index them. These books were displayed on Google's search results page with no preview available, a new category distinguishing it from full preview, books in the public domain, limited preview, books under copyright for which Google had secured permission to show a limited number of pages in its Book Partners program, and snippet view, books under copyright for which Google had not secured permission to display pages. The entries for the no preview books were placeholders, but they provided far more than bare-bones card catalog information. Lists of references from web pages, reviews of the books that were available online, references to the books that had been found in other books that were already indexed, and references from scholarly works indexed in Google Scholar. After it arrived at the realization that it had enormous amounts of useful information about books in other silos, including the largest one, the web, Google could offer users a rich array of supplementary information about any given title, and it could do so without infringing on the rights of the book's copyright holders. One has to admire the ingenuity of Google's staff, using Google's vast information assets to augment what could be known about a book beyond a bibliographic card. At the same time, one also has to wonder how foolish it had been for Google to be so impatient to build up its book collection that it had asserted a right to make digital copies of books in print without the permission of copyright holders. The two lawsuits filed against it by publishers and by the Authors Guild continued to grind on. In early 2008, the presiding U.S. District Court Judge, Johnny Spritzo, set a deadline of April 2009 for submission of motions for summary judgment. Trials will come still later. Everything that Google used to create a customized website in 2007 for any book had also been available to it in 2004. Google's book search managers may have been blind to the opportunities to cross-link across different silos of information that was in the public domain because such incremental improvements lacked the stirring scale of the near impossible, the transfixing imagery of a moonshot. With 28 participating libraries, Google's book search collections continued to grow as the scanning proceeded, still entirely out of public view. In February 2008, the University of Michigan was the first library to reach the mark of 1 million books online, 361,441,145 total pages and counting. The progress was not as fast as the original moonshots. 6.5 million books in the university's collections remained to be scanned. But an end was within sight. The university expected to complete the project early in the next decade. The legal issues remained outstanding, but the logistical issues seemed to have been tamed. Google was well along in its endeavor to bring the entire world of published text into its digital storehouse. Chapter 5. GooTube. Google's success was based on mastery of words. It was words that its crawlers pulled from web pages, then indexed and analyzed, determining which pages were deemed the most relevant to a search. It was words between covers that its book search project extracted and fed into Google's hungry maw. Wherever words could be found and digitized, the algorithm could go to work. Google could search, however, only words that took written form. In 2004, when Yahoo began including videos in its search results, Google could not. Its crawler completely ignored video files. Yahoo never boasted about its superiority over Google in this regard, because Yahoo itself could find only a small percentage of all the video files rapidly being loaded onto the web by then. The problem was that most videos were invisible to web crawlers. Even if they could be found, crawlers could not categorize their subject material because digital video files provided no exterior clues about their contents. Videos proved to be a formidable challenge for search. How Google responded to this challenge suggests a willingness on the company's part to depart from the approaches that had served it well in developing its core strengths in searching web pages and serving up relevant advertising. Video presented Google with an opportunity to expand from information embodied in text, which was easy to search, to forms of information that required advances in computer science in order to be understood by the algorithm. And it also was presented with the opportunity to take notice that innovation within its walls did not always keep up with innovation taking place outside. The company could have decided to stick with the tried and true, the algorithm, and with its own talent to enter new fields, or it could have decided to scale back its ambition to organize all the world's information, deliberately excluding some categories. Instead, it decided that its mission would remain paramount, and Google would take different paths, if necessary, toward its realization. The story of how Google moved into video shows a company that was adaptable, letting go of the algorithm and embracing, ultimately, the notion that it would have to make its first major acquisition in order to secure a significant position in the competition to organize the world's information in the form of video. At the start, Google's executives gave no thought to the possibility that video files would require special treatment. Their attachment to automation led them to be content with whatever the Google crawler found in its travels. Video files, lacking descriptive names, were of no interest to the crawler and were ignored. Yahoo realized before Google that standard web crawls simply would not work well for videos, and came up with an innovative idea: inviting the hosts of websites to supply some descriptive information about videos they had posted on their sites, so that a crawler could collect and use it to expand an index of online videos. In December 2004, Yahoo launched Yahoo Video Search Beta to enlist the assistance of website hosts. Web pages are self-describing, explained Bradley Horowitz, Yahoo's director of media search at the time of the announcement, while a video link is opaque, and you don't know what's inside the video. Web hosts were invited to add a tag to video files that would provide basic information, such as title, actors, and file format, that would be visible to all crawlers. Some media companies did take steps to make their video offerings searchable. If one wanted to search online the contents of a particular television series, such as Washington Week in Review, or PBS's NewsHour, or Julia Child, Lessons with the Master Chef, one could often do so on sponsoring producers' websites. The site's search technology made use of the closed captioning transcripts prepared for the shows. One could search for the occurrence of a name or phrase mentioned in a broadcast, but that didn't do viewers much good because the sites generally didn't offer playback of the segments that were found. The search offered by Shadow TV, a fee-based service that let subscribers search many television news broadcasts and then view selected snippets, was also based on the closed captioning texts. Several companies claimed to have developed voice recognition technology for searching video, which could identify words from the audio portion of the video file and did not have to rely on closed captioning. This promised a substantial advance in search. One of those making this claim was an intrepid startup called Blinks. In December 2004, the day after Yahoo announced its video search beta offering, Blinks made a splash with its announcement of its own video search service, which included 42,000 hours of video clips from 15 television channels. Visitors were promised the ability to search for a term and then be able to watch a brief video clip matched to the term. With the back-to-back Yahoo and Blinks announcements, video search became the topic du jour on the web. Google was not ready. It was still preparing for the launch of its own video service and would join the others late. Google chose not to follow Blinks in attempting to rely on voice recognition for its video search. The voice recognition technology turned out to be far from ready for prime time, as those who tried searches at Blinks would soon discover. Interestingly, given Google's approach to its book search program, the company also chose not to follow Blinks's lead regarding the posting of clips without the permission of the copyright holders. Blinks had not made any arrangements with the video companies whose video it was making viewable, and before long, one of those companies raised concerns. When CNN was told that its clips would be available for free, the company publicly announced that it had not authorized Blinks to use its video. Blinks counterclaimed that under the doctrine of copyright's fair use, it could show a clip of up to 30 seconds without needing to secure permission. The likelihood of lawsuits over the impasse was noted in the press coverage. Google did not follow Blinks into legal difficulties over fair use, at least initially. The company blundered down a different path. Acting on the assumption that spoken words were no less useful than written ones, Google's video team investigated ways of turning video into text. It seized upon closed captioning text for convenient searching. Closed captioning, in turn, led Google to focus on video from the major media companies, as they were the only ones that could afford the expense of preparing captioning for their programs. A television industry executive who was briefed on Google's plans said at the time, "Google's trying to bring TV to the web the same way they're bringing books to the web." This path would lead Google into obscurity. Videos that were accompanied by closed captioning would turn out to be an inconsequential sliver of the videos that people would want to watch online. In December 2004, Google engineers at the Mountain View Googleplex installed racks of TV tuners in order to record television broadcasts and the closed captioning from 10 San Francisco Bay Area stations, C-SPAN, and some other cable channels. The long-term plan for video was to set up an online video store and have users purchase rights to view videos on their PCs. When the company formally launched Google Video in late January 2005, more than a month after Yahoo Video's announcement, it had stored about 2 terabytes of digital videos. Google thought that was a good start. What Google unveiled, however, was a service that was woefully behind the competition. To begin with, it did not include any videos on the web. Google had not focused on programming its web crawlers to spot video files that were available online, so its index of videos was restricted effectively to only those television broadcasts it had recorded. A Google video search sorted through the closed captioning transcripts of those programs and then listed videos that matched the search phrase. There was no link, however, that would begin playing the relevant video. Google's users had to content themselves with a still photograph taken from the matching video episode, passages in the transcript in which the search phrase appeared, and a cheerful announcement of when the next episode of that series would be aired. But as long as the episode found in the search couldn't actually be viewed, why bother searching? Google Video could not, in short, have started with a more modest and less satisfying offering. Even so, Google's service provoked a hail of criticism from media companies. Executives at CBS and Time Warner's television unit ordered Google to back off. Larry Kramer, the head of digital media at CBS, said that Google didn't show proper respect for us as potential partners. The essential mistake that Google had made was assuming that videos were just another source of authoritative information, like all the text-based media that the algorithm had learned to search through so well. What no one at Google noticed, however, was that video would be more appealing as a medium for pure, unedifying entertainment, and could be produced by anyone who owned a camcorder. The quest for professionally produced documentary or news videos with closed captioning transcripts had led Google badly astray. In the meantime, a new model for video on the web was being born. At the same time that Google was taping television broadcasts, Jawed Karim, a 25-year-old software engineer working at PayPal, was giving a good deal of thought to video and the web. None of his thinking coincided with Google's. Karim had been a computer science major, but he had left the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign before graduating to accept an offer to work in Silicon Valley at PayPal. His resume, which included student internships at the University of Minnesota Supercomputing Institute, the National Center for Supercomputing Applications in Champaign, and Silicon Graphics, reflected immersion in deep computer science problems. The idea that he came up with in his free time, however, addressed a practical problem, not a theoretical one: how to make uploading and playing videos painless. It led to YouTube, the company he would co-found with 2 friends at PayPal, Chad Hurley and Steve Chen. The original idea for YouTube is traceable to a moment of serendipitous discovery in December 2004, when Karim came across a stray statistic that caught his eye. In Wired magazine, he read an article about BitTorrent, a software technology that allows fast transfer of very large files. The trick is that it uses peer-to-peer networking. BitTorrent, for example, was the technology that enabled the viral spread of a now infamous Jon Stewart television appearance. In the fall of 2004, Stewart appeared on CNN's Crossfire and astringently critiqued his hosts, Paul Begala and Tucker Carlson. He called their work partisan hackery and singled out Carlson as a dick. A clip posted online caromed around the web. In a few weeks, it was viewed by 2.3 million people, passed along through BitTorrent. The fact that jumped out at Karim in the Wired article was that the Stewart clip had been seen online by at least 3 times as many people as had originally watched Stewart on CNN. The Stewart clip was not the first one to enjoy such wide circulation. The emergence of clip culture had actually begun with the sharing of the much-discussed clip of Janet Jackson's wardrobe malfunction during the Super Bowl earlier that year. But with the clip of Stewart on Crossfire, the velocity of viral sharing between PCs had sped up. Soon, the diversity of types of video that people might want to share in large numbers would become clearer. Shortly after the article in Wired appeared, the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami struck. CNN camera crews were not present to capture the tragedy, and it became the first large-scale disaster chronicled primarily by cell phone camcorders. Karim perceived that viewers who attempted to watch these virally spread videos ran into all sorts of technical difficulties, and he figured that a site that made uploading and watching any video effortless would fill an unmet need. He regarded sharing videos as the next logical step in the evolution of social networking, or what was then called the social content space. It could be traced back to the appearance in 1999 of LiveJournal, which offered anyone space to publish personal writings. Each succeeding year brought another innovation. In 2000, Hot or Not took off. Anyone could upload a photo and anyone else could vote on that person's hotness. In 2001, Wikipedia showed the willingness of volunteers to contribute their time to an online project sharing expertise without monetary compensation. In 2002, Friendster established some of the essential elements of a social networking site, such as profile pages and access to the profiles of friends and friends of friends. In 2003, Delicious, del.icio.us, popularized the sharing of favorite web pages. Then, in 2004, Flickr combined the uploading of photos to a publicly accessible website, allowing others to append tags with descriptive labels and comment on them, forms of sharing. Karim thought, why not create a Flickr for videos? His friends, Chen and Hurley, agreed that the idea was good, but they wondered, why hasn't someone else already done this? With some investigation, they decided the answer was that they'd happened on the idea with fortuitous timing. 3 crucial technological developments had only recently come about: the rapid expansion of broadband connections to the home, a significant drop in the cost of buying bandwidth, which was needed for streaming videos, and the decision by Adobe, the publisher of Flash multimedia software, to include video playing support. Flash was being installed in most new computers, so this eliminated the problem of incompatible video encoding formats that users often encountered when they downloaded and then attempted to play a video file. When the 3 friends decided to try out their idea on venture capitalists, though, the response was tepid at best. Many didn't even bother to call them back. Others simply shrugged at their presentation. One was willing to grant that the idea seemed cute. Undeterred, Karim, Chen, and Hurley went ahead and founded YouTube in February 2005. They didn't actually need venture capitalists to get started anyway. They had considerable financial assets of their own. All 3 had joined PayPal in its early days and had become wealthy when eBay acquired the company in 2002. Karim knew from the beginning that he would not stay at YouTube for long. He had completed his undergraduate degree while working and already had plans to start a full-time graduate program in computer science at Stanford the next fall. The three founders agreed to an arrangement in which Karim would not be a YouTube employee and would receive a smaller stake than the other two, formally holding only the title of advisor. His presence tends to be omitted entirely in short versions of the company's official history, leaving the impression that Chen and Hurley were the sole founders. The three required only 2 months to develop the code and launch the site, which they did in April 2005. The only videos they initially had to offer, however, were those that they took from one another to serve as placeholders. The historic first YouTube video was an 18-second segment of Karim standing in front of a pen of elephants at a zoo, explaining with a self-mocking wink how elephants have really, really, really long trunks. This would not do, they knew. So they asked their friends to contribute videos too. Karim's email to his buddies asked, "Can you help us spread the word? Since we've just launched, there are no girls in it. Yet. Can you guys upload your own videos?" They had few takers. Weeks passed, and the site drew only a smattering of submissions. What would become the fastest-growing site in the history of the web came into existence seemingly stillborn. In May, with the spirits of the co-founders at their nadir, they captured their bleak sentiments on a video shot in the garage that served as YouTube's office. By the end of the previous week, Steve Chen said, he had become pretty depressed because, dude, we have like maybe 40, 50, 60 videos on the site. It was an appallingly small number. And the quality of what had been posted made him wince. There were few videos he'd want to watch himself. At this point, they decided to try a desperate measure. They would run an advertisement on Craigslist in the Los Angeles area inviting attractive women to upload videos of themselves. The enticement would be a payment of $100 upon submission of every 10 videos. This, too, ended in failure. The advertisement drew not a single response. YouTube desperately needed content. To attract more amateur contributors, they unveiled in June a dramatically redesigned site. When a user saw a YouTube video that he or she wished to share with friends, a single click would send an email notification to as many friends as desired. This made viewers unpaid marketers, spreading the word about YouTube's offerings. The site also thoughtfully provided a little snippet of identifying code next to each video that could be copied and pasted elsewhere, making it easy to embed a YouTube video on any web page, including those at MySpace. Sharing word about a video became painless, and immediately the site began to draw more users. They, in turn, uploaded more videos, which then drew still more users. On a single day, the site drew 50 new videos, then 60, and then 70. Once every 2 weeks, with unfailing regularity, word about one particular video would zip around, making it a widely mentioned sensation. As the number of videos uploaded took off during the summer of 2005, these viral hits appeared at ever shorter intervals. Michael Arrington, whose influential TechCrunch site covered technology startups, was the first to take notice of YouTube's jump in traffic and videos. In early August 2005, Arrington praised the service for fast uploads, fast playbacks, and interesting videos. He declared that his absolute favorite was Mat Dances Around the World, a much-viewed hit that had been uploaded only 4 days before. "I suspect YouTube will be quickly acquired and/or duplicated," he wrote. "We love it." That profile in TechCrunch led to coverage on Slashdot, another site widely read among the digerati. Slashdot's coverage, YouTube, the flicker of video, then brought yet another spike in YouTube's traffic. In no time, as Arrington had predicted, YouTube's founders faced a field of competitors. Just 3 months after his YouTube review, when he returned to the subject to cover YouTube's competitors, he listed 8 leading contenders: CastPost, ClipShack, Dailymotion, Grouper, Our Media, Rever, Vimeo, and vSocial. When someone asked in a comment that followed Arrington's post why he had omitted Google Video, Arrington apologized for the omission, "I'm an idiot," and said, of course, they should have been included. The fact that Google Video had slipped his mind, however, was quite telling. Google Video hardly existed. Googlers were slow to understand that the most popular video service would not use the same approach that Google had used with web pages, honing its software formula to determine relative trustworthiness, reputation, and relevance to a search term. YouTube's hypergrowth had nothing to do with algorithms and everything to do with the unpaid contributions of its own users. It was the users who submitted the clips, sorted out the interesting ones from the less interesting, and spread word about the best clips among friends. Viral distribution of hits took care of the marketing end, for free. Before YouTube appeared, Google Video was slow to relinquish its attachment to professionally produced video. In April 2005, just as YouTube appeared, Google announced that it would accept videos submitted by users of any length and size, subject to Google's review process. Unlike YouTube, however, Google made clear it was especially interested in submissions from what it referred to as major producers, television stations or video production houses with 1,000 or more hours of video. Enlisting the owners of large collections of content would not only help seed the site quickly, but also speed realization of Google's long-term plan to sell online access to videos. At the time that Google invited users to submit videos, it was not able to make the submissions available for viewing. Jennifer Fiken, director of Google's video program, nonsensically explained the lapse by saying that Google needed to better understand how people have authored their video before it could learn how to search them. The Googlers appeared to have thought that the company's brand commanded such loyalty that users would be willing to do almost anything to be associated with it, including contributing videos that could not be viewed. Larry Page referred to Google's addition of video uploads as an experiment. Indeed, Google was overtly asking video creators to help the company learn how to enter the video business. Page later described what Google did as being admittedly weird because it was called Google Video, but you couldn't actually watch any video. 2 months later, in June 2005, Google finally had a video viewer ready. Unlike YouTube's Flash-based viewer, Google's required its own separate one-time installation. At last, 5 months after launching its video site, Google could accept and play user-generated video. The company had not moved very far, however, from its original assumption that video would take off online when professionally produced programs were digitized. The company still clung to the idea that a closed captioning transcript was essential for searching videos. Peter Chain, Google Video's senior product manager, said, "Once people see that if you have a transcript you'll do better, that is, show up in Google's search results, more people will go back and get their stuff transcribed." In an effort to avoid antagonizing the major media companies, Google reviewed all video uploads for possible copyright violations before they were made available to the public. Chain, however, self-deprecatingly described the company's review process as very superficial. Videos weren't actually viewed in their entirety, just skimmed for a quick check that the contents weren't pornographic and didn't include blatant copyright violations. By contrast, YouTube was inviting users to upload any kind of personal video, as long as its running time was short. The only guidelines for contributors in its first 4 months were to avoid nudity and stay within a limit of 100 megabytes for any one video file. This effectively prevented users from uploading full-length television programs. A short clip of a favorite show, though, was tacitly welcomed as a form of personal expression. YouTube considered such a clip to be a personal video. Once YouTube was widely perceived as the one place to go for online video, which happened during the summer of 2005, the site's dominance was self-sustaining. Both viewers and video creators congregated where they knew most videos, and the most viewers were to be found. A similar phenomenon had benefited eBay, which had emerged from an even more crowded field, competing in 1997 against more than 150 online auction sites. Once eBay had edged ahead of the others in 1998, its lead quickly widened and then solidified. YouTube's growth was vertiginous. It could be represented on a graph only with a line that angled at almost 90 degrees. Its rate of growth surpassed those of eBay, Google's web search, Wikipedia, MySpace, Facebook, and any other prior website. By November, it was serving 8 terabytes of data every day. A month later, it had doubled again to 16 terabytes, which was 3 million daily video views. Just as Brin and Page had at first done with web search, YouTube's founders devoted all of their attention to building a compelling service and didn't consider how it would make money. As traffic multiplied exponentially and its operational costs ballooned, the company's need for capital grew pressing. In seeking venture capital when it was growing exponentially, YouTube occupied an enviable position in which the traditional roles were reversed. Venture capital firms did the pitching, and YouTube did the selecting. YouTube's entrepreneurs, Chen and Hurley, Karim had started graduate school, ended up accepting $3.5 million from Sequoia Capital, the same firm that had financed both Yahoo and Google. In landing YouTube, Sequoia would solidify its reputation as the world's shrewdest investor in web startups. Sequoia did everything right. Perhaps most impressive to the YouTube founders, Sequoia was the only firm they visited that demonstrated interest in actually using the service. The day after Chen and Hurley visited at Sequoia, the partners, their assistants, and everyone in the office, it seemed, had dropped whatever else they were doing to upload and share videos. Even drawing 3 million views a day and growing at an unprecedented rate, YouTube was still vulnerable to being overtaken by a far more powerful competitor, such as Google. But Google missed the opportunity to exploit its size to catch up, for at least 2 reasons. First, YouTube grew organically out of clip culture, which required a loose interpretation of what constituted fair use of copyrighted material. Google would run into serious trouble persuading book publishers that it was attentive to their copyright concerns if it allowed the uploading of clips of television shows or amateur videos accompanied by copyrighted soundtracks. Google was also saddled with the burden of proving that the company could move beyond a single skill, its lucrative search-based advertising business. Google Video was an opportunity to show that the company could create a new stream of revenue from a pay-to-view service. This is why Google ignored the success YouTube was having with its free service. It still planned to open an online store. In January 2006, Google unveiled the Google Video Store at the annual Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. The announcement was awkward, nothing like the kind of show Steve Jobs pulls off. One of the partners Google had brought on board was the NBA, and former NBA star Kenny Smith was on hand. Larry Page seemed all too sincere when the script called for him to pretend not to recognize Smith. CBS's Leslie Moonves, eager to trumpet the availability of CBS programs for sale at Google's new store, said Google not only is but will remain a very Brady place. Google remained a very Brady place for only 18 months when it ignominiously closed the video store. In retrospect, it had no chance of succeeding. The pact with the NBA assumed a market demand for stale content. Games were sold 24 hours after broadcast, as if each one were an instant classic, and the buyer lacked a recording device at home. As for the CBS programs, Google had not fared well in negotiations there either. The Google Video Store was permitted to offer only 1 episode of a CBS series at a time. Apple, by contrast, had secured the right from ABC to offer an entire season of shows, such as 35 episodes of Desperate Housewives for iTunes. Google customers were further restricted to viewing the videos on a networked PC. Viewing on a portable device was not an option. Unlike a purchase downloaded from iTunes, a video bought and downloaded from the Google Store could be played only if the PC could obtain permission from Google's server, and the permission had to be obtained anew before each viewing. The Google Video Store was a latecomer that never came close to matching iTunes. Meanwhile, in the spring of 2006, YouTube's growth picked up even greater speed. The 3 million daily page views in November 2005 had grown by April 2006 to an incomprehensible 100 million, a self-propelling cultural phenomenon. Growth required of YouTube's management little but attention to 2 matters: keeping its site operational and remembering to pay the specialized behind-the-scenes companies, content delivery networks, that maintained copies of the videos on their servers and took care of the distribution of the video streams. Sequoia and a second firm invested an additional $8 million to make sure that YouTube's bills were paid in a timely fashion. By May, the YouTube phenomenon was affecting the strategy and thinking of every competitor. Google, too, had taken notice. When Google's Peter Chain was interviewed by Wired and asked if professionalism in videos mattered, Chain said, "I don't know, but if you watch a video on the web and you don't get it within a few seconds, you go to something else because it's so easy." This was an answer quite unlike what he would have given 6 months previously. When a reporter from the Chicago Tribune sat in on a meeting with Chain and his Google video team at the Googleplex, the Googler's frustration was evident. How could Google fail to offer a service superior to that of a tiny upstart with only 60-some employees? "We look just like YouTube," Chain said. "We're a cleaner, more thoughtful YouTube with less features." YouTube had won the race against Google for content and viewers, but it had not figured out a feasible way to make money. Beginning in December 2005, YouTube began to run a few advertisements. They were displayed on its web pages, not embedded in videos, and they were too few in number to bring in revenue of any real significance. But their presence on the site created a legal tempest. In July 2006, Robert Tour, a journalist and helicopter pilot, filed the first lawsuit against YouTube, accusing the company of profiting by the theft of copyrighted materials. A clause in the Digital Millennium Copyright Act prohibits a website from profiting from the display of copyrighted material, and YouTube's video collection was filled with clips that drew on copyrighted material. What had saved YouTube from legal action up until then was the absence of revenue. If YouTube was now going to advertise, that dodge would no longer work. Tour had shot a video of the 1992 Los Angeles riots, and the footage ended up on YouTube without his authorization. YouTube's competitors, however, used this case as an opportunity to contrast YouTube's passive acceptance of infringing material with their own strict scrutiny. In August 2006, at the industry trade show Digital Hollywood, Revers Oliver Luckett touted his company's policy of having a human editor screen every video before it was posted, which resulted in rejection of 10 to 50% of submissions due to the use of infringing material. He said that the copyright holders who were the victims of infringement by other sites, clearly a jab at YouTube, were most often the little guys who were ignored by the new kind of upstarts that don't respect their rights. One of the little guys, a woman filmmaker named Ari Lee, who had produced an experimental film for Atom Films, was not pleased to see that her film, Me, which consisted of a compilation of self-portraits that she took daily from 2001 to 2004, had been copied and uploaded on YouTube. Atom Films provided its video creators a share of advertising revenue. Lee's film, which was drawing hundreds of thousands of views on Atom Films' website, had the potential to produce significant income for Lee, until it was copied and uploaded to YouTube. She knew that if she filled out an online form at YouTube's site to request that the film be removed, YouTube would embark upon a lengthy process to determine whether Lee was, in fact, the copyright holder, which would take days, if not weeks. In the meantime, the brief moment when Me would be much discussed and viewed would have come and gone. Clip culture did not give any thought to the video creators. The culture imposed no restrictions on the instant gratification of viewers. Lee happened to live close by YouTube's office in San Bruno, California, and she decided to present her case in person. She somehow managed to get past security and get the attention of someone who heard her out and offered to replace the full 3-minute version on YouTube with an abridged 1-minute version that, at the end, would direct viewers to Atom Films, where viewers could generate income for Lee. A year later, the results were mixed. Me had been viewed about 600,000 times at Atom Films, and more than 3.8 million times at YouTube. What portion of the YouTube views replaced Atom Films, and what portion of Atom Films' visitors had been redirected from YouTube was impossible to say. In any case, the episode offered little comfort to filmmakers who did not happen to live next door to YouTube. One might have expected Google to join the other critics of YouTube and condemn the cavalier disregard for intellectual property rights that was found in clip culture. But Google elected to hold back. sensing an opportunity to benefit by adopting YouTube's model of hosting clips without the permission of the creators. Peter Chain was asked at a panel at Digital Hollywood what he thought about a hypothetical fan of The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, a regular viewer of the broadcast, who one night happened to miss the show and searched it out on an online video site. Chain said content creators were coming to the realization that posting segments of shows online was a positive, not a negative. He reported that Google was finding more creators coming to it, saying, "We want our clips to be online." Revers Luckett shot back, "I don't see how Hollywood or TV land is real excited about content that they paid an exorbitant amount of money to produce and create and pay for the stars and do all that, being placed on YouTube for viewing for free. Yes, the actors on The Daily Show may be thrilled because their own popularity is enhanced, but the people that are monetizing it are probably not thrilled that the ads are stripped out and that it's floating around the internet." For YouTube, what the owners of The Daily Show thought about clips being uploaded without permission was, in fact, a vital, unanswered question. They weren't a small, independent filmmaker like Ari Lee. The Daily Show was owned by media giant Viacom. Were YouTube to find itself in a legal battle with Viacom, it would not even be able to afford the legal equivalent of a slingshot. 100 million downloads a day did not change the fact that YouTube was still a tiny startup, just a little over a year old, with only 78 employees and revenue of only about $10.6 million for the year, versus Viacom's $1.6 billion. YouTube also had yet to earn a profit. Chen and Hurley also knew enough to admit to themselves that their legal arguments weren't likely to go very far in court. As Chen said, "I was really confident on the engineering side, the scalability side, that we could continue to grow out and be able to service the needs for the growth. But it was really more of the legal side, that there was just no way we could leverage or hire the resources alone." The two young men decided to approach Google and Yahoo to gauge their interest in acquiring their company. The timing was perfect. At the very moment YouTube realized that it had made big company enemies that it could not afford to defend itself against in court, Google realized that its homegrown Google Video service would never be able to approach the popularity of YouTube. As soon as YouTube made itself available for acquisition, Google pounced. With a $1.65 billion bid that drew wide notice for the generosity of the valuation, Google wrapped up the acquisition quickly. Before the deal closed, Sequoia's Rolf Botha was asked to explain why YouTube had become so much more popular than Google Video and all other competitors. Botha, whose firm had backed Google as well as YouTube, put his finger on the salient factor. YouTube, unlike Google Video, had become one of the handful of sites that many people visited daily. At the end of the day, they'd take a break, have a laugh, want to be entertained. The network effect: the more videos uploaded, the more viewers and creators attracted, and then again the more videos uploaded, was critically important, creating what he described with dry understatement as a bit of a snowball effect. Google had recognized that the YouTube model, building a video site around entertainment and social networking, had bested its own dull model, which conceived of video as a professionally prepared information resource. But Google executives could not bear to state the obvious. When asked to comment on the YouTube acquisition, Sergey Brin said, "When I perform a search, I often find that the best answer is not necessarily a web page. I know that sounds like heresy from Google, but in fact, if you are learning a sport, if you want to build a house, if you want to study a science, often videos are the best medium to learn about those things, to learn how to do those things." There it still was, the Google orthodoxy that it was doing nothing other than what it had always been doing, building out the world's largest reference room. And YouTube was a natural extension, purchased so that Google users could study a science. When the transaction was completed in October 2006, Google dropped the high-minded rationalizations and allowed YouTube to grow unimpeded, without imposing a Google master plan upon it. YouTube offices remained where they had been, in San Bruno, about 25 miles north of Google's Mountain View headquarters. Google's high command encouraged YouTube to carry on in the same raucous way it had, permitting users to upload almost anything they wished. A couple of initiatives to add some edifying content, such as debates among presidential candidates in the 2008 election campaigns, and lectures taped from classes at the University of California, Berkeley, and other universities, did not change YouTube's essential character as the richest repository of popular culture to be found anywhere on the Internet. Amusingly, its overwhelming lead in online video has not brought Google a new, profitable way to organize the world's information. For all its smarts and size, Google has not made much progress in answering the same vexing question that flummoxed YouTube 2 years earlier, when it was still a very small, very new, and very inexperienced company, which was, how does one make money from online video? Everything that Google has learned about matching relevant advertisements to users who are searching for something specific on the web is all but useless in the different world of short video entertainment. And prospective advertisers are skittish about placing advertisements into an automated system that could match their brand with user-submitted videos that are tasteless, profane, or worse. Google is trying to gain users' acceptance of commercials that run as an overlay on top of selected videos, but the efforts have yet to produce revenue that is significant enough to warrant disclosure. An analyst with the Yankee Group said in March 2008 that he would be surprised if YouTube managed to take in $20 million in all of 2007. Yet it was spending about $1 million a day to pay for bandwidth. In April 2008, when Eric Schmidt was asked how Google planned to earn a profit from YouTube, he said that the answer continued to elude the company, but it was now deemed our highest priority this year. As YouTube's traffic continues to expand, and Google adds still more features, introducing higher-resolution video in March 2008, and new software tools that will make it easier for website editors to utilize YouTube videos on their own sites, a program that Google calls YouTube Everywhere, its costs seem likely to increase faster than advertising revenue, at least in the short term. No other Google venture has entailed an investment as large as this. No other venture brings in so much traffic for so little revenue. It may well turn out to have been a shrewd bet, but its video assets have brought Google rather far away from its roots as a disinterested party that sent users elsewhere on the web as speedily as possible, and have pulled it into the entertainment business, where it seeks to keep users happily engrossed with the video diversions that it stores on its own servers. If YouTube really holds an essential part of the world's information, then so too does any media company. As long as Google keeps YouTube, there is no reason why it could not also acquire the New York Times or other media properties. YouTube's motley collection of diversions stands so far outside of Google's original conception of information that what seems least likely is its present status as the company's sole major entertainment division, and one that continues to be a costly work in progress. Either Google will make additional investments in media properties and deal with criticism that in doing so it is creating conflicts of interest with its core business in web search, where it is ostensibly a neutral adjudicator of quality, or it will decide that it does not want to be in the entertainment business after all and shed YouTube. The course it adopts will probably be decided not by internal etymological discussions about the meaning of information, but by scrutinizing the profit-loss statements for the YouTube division, and by estimating the enhanced value to the Google brand from YouTube's astonishing volume of traffic. YouTube is an anomaly, a venture that raises questions about Google's commitment to the original interpretation of its charter. Other experiments have served to expand dramatically the range of Google's information offerings too, but have done so in a way that reinforces Google's role as the neutral reference librarian. These have been smooth, natural extensions of Google's strength in organizing disorderly masses of data. Perhaps the one service that shows Google's innovative work in information organization at its best is the one that has added a spatial dimension to everyday information seeking. By integrating geographic information with non-geographic information, conveniently, ingeniously, even entertainingly, Google allows users to see the world in ways never possible before. Chapter 6. Small World After All. In 2004, Sergey Brin came across a very small company whose online service accomplished very big things. One could use it to travel, virtually speaking, anywhere on Earth, with satellite imagery used to provide a visually riveting experience. He was eager to share his discovery of this technical marvel with fellow members of Google's executive team. He interrupted a routine meeting with a demonstration that got everyone's attention. With his laptop computer, he flew from a high altitude down to the house of every executive in the room. It was a feat that required the manipulation of enormous quantities of digital data. Some forms of information can be stored compactly, some not. Web pages, composed of text, take little space. In 1998, the year of Google's founding, the entire World Wide Web could be stored on hard drives that fit within a dorm room. Such compact storage was possible only because most of the web's information consisted of text. But were one to think about information about the real world, the information that covers the Earth's 57,300,000 square miles of land, considerably more disk space and computing power would be required. Collections of satellite images of the Earth constitute one of the bulkiest collections in the entire digital universe. These are measured not in gigabytes or in terabytes, but in petabytes or millions of gigabytes. With Brin's demonstration of effortless virtual flight anywhere, using just a laptop, he showed his Google colleagues that technology had evolved sufficiently to make it possible for the general public, using ordinary hardware, to enjoy access to the database of photographs that had only recently been limited to the defense establishment. Still, it was a novelty, a little bit of science and a little bit of entertainment, and nothing more. Brin would convince the others that the imagery of the Earth, when integrated with other information in Google's storehouses, could be used for a more ambitious purpose that would reorient the starting point for information searches, literally and figuratively. Instead of beginning with a text phrase, a user could begin with a place. The globe itself could become the organizing structure for information, the idea that would lead to the release of a new product, Google Earth. The possibility of using geography to organize the world's information was contemplated only because photographic images enlivened maps in new ways, making them nigh irresistible. Satellites equipped to take photographs of the Earth were first launched by the U.S. government in the 1950s, and civilian access to the images was limited. But in the 1990s, the U.S. government relaxed its controls and began to permit private companies to launch satellites designed expressly to gather high-resolution digital images of the Earth for commercial purposes. Technically, it seemed easier to send satellites aloft than it was to work with the massive digital files that they sent back down to Earth. The images could be used most conveniently if they could be stitched together in a seamless way, creating on a computer screen a virtual globe that a user could navigate by pointing a mouse in any direction. In the late 1990s, there was only one place in the world with the computing resources that were necessary: the basement of the Pentagon, with a machine room outfitted with the biggest beasts in graphic supercomputing, made by Silicon Graphics, the company that had made a name as supplier of the machines used in Hollywood for digital special effects in The Terminator and Jurassic Park. In just a few years, however, a virtual globe constructed with satellite images could be displayed not just at the Pentagon, but on any PC connected to the Internet. In Google's hands, the satellite images of the Earth would be integrated with overlays of city streets, geotagged photographs and videos, local business listings, and hundreds of other categories of information, many of which were formerly not thought of as geographic in nature, but that could be tied in some way to place. Literary biography, for example, can be expressed in a geographic dimension. A Jane Austen layer can be superimposed on the Earth, showing the places Austen lived or visited, the actual places that appear in her writing, and the places used in the film adaptations of her books. The geographic possibilities were not limited to just one planet. Images of the Moon, Mars, and constellations filled in a panoramic view of the entire cosmos. Google could provide its users with ready access to the remotest corner of the universe because of the founders' original fixation on building unlimited computing capacity. All of its geographic services were handled by the same ever-growing supercomputer, designed originally for storing copies of web pages. Google has made the Earth seem like a single, cozy place. But in so doing, it has also made our own presence more visible, whether we wish that or not. We have begun to realize, belatedly, that distance serves to protect our anonymity and privacy. Within the small virtual world, where anyone can see every place and, as photographs are melded with maps, every earthbound resident becomes increasingly visible to more and more people, an individual's sense of privacy dissolves as fast as the Earth seems to shrink. The technology that Google used to shrink the globe was not produced originally by Google's own engineers. As was the case with YouTube, here, too, a tiny startup jumped far ahead of the much bulkier, slower-moving Google. The service that the general public would later come to know as Google Earth was pioneered by Keyhole, a small startup company located in Google's backyard. Keyhole's founders foresaw that finding ways to give the public convenient access to satellite images of the Earth would lead to a myriad of uses of the images. In this regard, they were extremely prescient. They were not at all sure about how to go about making a business out of such possibilities, however. What Keyhole planned was a subscription-based online service that would provide consumers with the ability to use a PC to fly around a three-dimensional virtual Earth, using actual satellite images instead of the machine-generated geometric shapes of computer games. But when Keyhole was founded in 2000, the world was not yet prepared to look at itself as it actually appears in real images. Viewing a single detailed image of the Earth was one thing. Viewing a seamless mosaic of images was quite another, and still required the processing power of a supercomputer. Keyhole's engineers came from companies in business lines that were serious, scientific visual simulation, and fun, computer gaming. They sensed that an opportunity would eventually open up for companies that offered the general public online access to a globe composed of satellite images. Customers' own personal computers, outfitted with 3D graphics cards and speedier internet connections, would be able to handle the massive amounts of geospatial data entailed. Preparations for greeting the future opportunity had to be timed well, though. If you start early enough, as Keyhole did, you do not have competition. Start too early, however, and you risk exhausting your startup capital before the conditions for the new market are in place. Keyhole came very close to going under. Google's and YouTube's history accepted, most Silicon Valley startups do not execute perfect timing and perish. Keyhole was fortunate to squeak by.